We just got back from a 10-day Caribbean cruise aboard Princess Cruises Crown Princess, and I thought I would share our embarkation experience. We flew into Fort Lauderdale the day before our embarkation because you never know what Pittsburgh weather is going to be like this time of year, and it's always better to be safe than sorry. We knew we'd be arriving in the evening, and we planned to go pretty much immediately in the morning to the cruise port, so we didn't have a lot of needs with our hotel stay, so we booked at the Ramada. The Ramada had a free shuttle from the airport to the hotel, and then the next day from the hotel to the cruise port. They also had a fairly decent pool, not that we planned on using it, but we wanted to check it out for possible future stays. It wasn't near the beach, but that's not really an issue either. We were more interested in proximity to the cruise port, and they also had a in-house restaurant, which was great because it meant we didn't have to go wandering around the neighborhood or getting an Uber or anything else to try and find dinner or breakfast. It wasn't the greatest hotel I've ever stayed at, but it was perfectly acceptable. It's definitely had some fairly recent renovations, but it was not the most high-end of hotels ever. It was perfectly acceptable. We had no problems with it. While we checked in, we went ahead and signed up for the shuttle the next morning and then dropped our bags off to go then have dinner at the hotel restaurant. It wasn't some grand fine dining experience, but it had a pretty varied menu and the food was perfectly fine and not outrageously priced, so it worked out really well if you don't really want to go wandering around and you just want to stay nice and local and have a nice little chillax evening before your cruise. The next morning we just had to pack up our belongings, which was pretty simple because I'd used sort of a modular packing system. I'll link that video down below. Then we just had to go out front, have breakfast, and then wait for the shuttle. There was a pretty decent sized crowd waiting for shuttles. They were going to various different cruise lines and cruise ships, but there was a pretty big number overall of us. It was a little hectic and crazy, and we were told there was some sort of a delay at the port. I don't know beyond that what was going on, but eventually everybody did get loaded onto shuttles and sent off to their ports. One interesting thing that happened when it was actually our turn to get onto the shuttle is that the guy that was sort of supervising and organizing the whole process asked us how we planned to get out of the cruise port and back to the airport after the cruise. We told him that we were just going to Uber from the cruise port to the airport, but he was like, "Oh, no, you can't do that. Uber doesn't pick up at the cruise port." So he told us we'd have to make some other arrangements, and he tried to sell us another shuttle trip from the cruise port to the airport, which, since we were no longer staying at the airport, which would now be an additional fee. This seemed a little weird to us, like why wouldn't Uber be picking up at the cruise port? That seems like a really big market. Seemed a little strange, so we didn't pay for anything then, and we went ahead and got onto the shuttle, and my husband immediately started doing the Google. And apparently, from what we can tell, yes, there did used to be a time when Uber would not pick up at the port because of various difficulties they were having there. They would drop people off, but they didn't pick people back up. So now that seems to not be the case, and when we actually disembarked, we were actually told, oh, shuttles and transfers to the airport are to the right, Ubers and taxis to the left. So they have a specific area for taxis and Ubers now. So if a shuttle driver or somebody tries to tell you that you cannot Uber from Port Everglades, that is at least no longer the case. Once our shuttle arrived at the cruise terminal, the porters were already there and ready to take our bags. So before you leave for the cruise terminal, make sure that you've attached all of your cruise luggage tags, because once you get to the cruise port, they are ready to take your bags. So you don't want to be like pulling out your stapler there and in everybody's way. Go ahead before you leave that morning and attach the luggage tags before you get to the cruise port. It'll just be a lot easier because everybody is ready to go at that point. We've never cruised with Princess before, so we didn't know what to expect, but you definitely don't have to worry about getting lost or not knowing where to go. You can just follow the herd. There are crew members there directing people, there is signage, and you can just keep going with the crowd. I don't know if the experience differs if you're on a regular Princess cruise, but we were on a medallion cruise. So once we got to the terminal and dropped off our bags, we just walked inside. We waited in a pretty short line, just a couple people ahead of us, to talk to a crew member. She greeted us all like polite and friendly, but we didn't sit and chit chat forever. She just scanned our medallion, verified our identities, and then directed us where to go to actually board the ship. So much faster and quicker than I was expecting as an embarkation process. We were pretty excited about that. We literally then just walked into the next room, which had the entire wall was this giant interactive screen where if you had set up a tag-along little avatar with your ocean medallion, that would swim around on the screen. And then they had a couple of the cruise ship photographers there that they would take your picture in front of the big pretty wall with the tag-alongs swimming along behind you. We didn't really care for that. We don't need a bunch of pictures taken of us, so we sort of scooted on past that. But if you're interested in that first big embarkation photo, that's where it will happen. And then you just literally go up a couple steps and you walk across the gangway, scan your medallion one more time, and you are on the ship. Our stateroom was on the Lido deck and it was all ready and waiting for us by the time we had already embarked. So we went ahead and checked that out really quick before going out to sort of explore the ship. We had selected the anytime dining option because the traditional dining options weren't really working for us, so one of our first goals for Embarkation Day was to meet with the maitre d' and schedule some reservations for a couple nights. So we went down to the Da Vinci dining room where the hostess told us that the maitre d' would be meeting at 2 o'clock, so we just sort of explored the ship for a little bit, had some lunch, and then eventually at around 2 did make our way back to the Da Vinci dining room. Obviously, there were other people that had the same plan, but we didn't have to wait too terribly long before we had a one-on-one meeting with the maitre d'. He chatted with us for a couple minutes about whether we'd want to eat alone or whether we would want to actually share a table with people. We told him that we kind of were interested in a combination. Some nights we wanted to have, like a little date night, just the two of us, but the other nights we were definitely open to sharing. Then he asked us about what time we would like to eat. We told him usually around 6. Since there are just the two of us, he said at that time of night, any night that we were willing to share should have no problem showing up pretty much anywhere, anytime, and we would have very little, if any, wait to get a table, as long as we were willing to share. So that was fine, but he did suggest that any night that the two of us wanted to dine alone, we might want to go ahead and make a reservation because that could potentially have a little bit of a wait involved. So on the maitre d's suggestion, on the 2 formal nights, we went ahead and made a reservation just for the two of us to dine alone, have some nice fancy little date nights, but planned on just sort of eating with whoever, whenever on the other nights. Lunch was a sort of quick and casual stop by the buffet, and I was pretty happy with what I saw. I'm a pretty picky eater, but I saw all kinds of really great options, especially since I was celebrating not being on my typical keto diet and I had a lot of my splurge foods available to me, so I was pretty satisfied with what I saw on the buffet. As usual, of course, you have to go to the muster drill. Normally, my experience with the muster drill is everybody is standing around awkwardly, smushed into these little tight lines, out on some random deck and just sort of standing there and waiting and then having to sit through the talk. It was a very, very different experience for us on this trip. For one thing, our muster station was the Princess Theater, the main theater of the ship. So you literally just got to sit in a nice, comfy theater seat instead of standing out awkwardly on a deck somewhere. There was a safety video on the big screen, the cruise director was there, and a bunch of the crew members, and they were all going over, the vest and how everything would work and what you needed to do. It was a much more entertaining and casual thing than I am used to with a muster drill, so that was nice. I appreciated being a little more comfortable than you typically think you're going to be standing around squeezed into a mass of people. It was a lot nicer. For dinner, we went down to the main dining room, and as a very picky eater, I really appreciate how Princess does their dinners. As usual, there are appetizers and main courses that change from night to night, but they also had some appetizers that are the Princess favorites that stay and are there every single night. So I didn't have to worry about there being a night if I didn't really like the looks of any of the appetizers because of my weird eating habits. There were a couple of really great princess favorites that are going to be there every night. So if I wanted to branch out and try something great and new and different, not a problem. But they had a couple things like potato soup and a Alfredo that are things that I don't normally get to eat but that I love. So it was nice to have those as an option every night no matter what, that I would still be really excited to eat those because they're things that I love, even if they are repeated from night to night and not anything new and crazy. And of course, after the appetizers and entrees, you move on to dessert. We were offered coffee, tea, or a after-dinner cocktail and given the menu. And of course, every night there were, again, different changing nightly dessert options as well as the princess favorites that were there every night. After dinner, we headed up on deck to the Movies Under the Stars area and watched the new live-action Aladdin. We've seen the movie before, but we enjoyed it, and it was nice to sit outside, watch a little movie, enjoy the nice warm air since it's not so warm at home, and it was just a nice, lovely evening. But if it does get a little chilly on some of those nights, especially when you're out at sea and it's really breezy, they do offer some blankets, which were very convenient and handy. And of course, one of the convenient things about our stateroom being on the Lido deck is that right after the movie, we were super close and we could just walk right to our room and relax. And waiting for us in our stateroom were a few surprises from our cabin steward. She had left us 2 beach towels to take to the island the next day, as well as the next day's princess patter, which is sort of the daily schedule of events, as well as this adorable little reusable shopping bag with the Princess Cruise Line logo and information on it. Very cute. I saw a lot of people carrying these around on various excursions and out to ports and whatnot, or just out onto deck to hold their towels. Very convenient, very nice. I didn't use it much on the ship, but I definitely used it to get things home, and I will definitely be using it to carry groceries and whatnot in. So I thought that was a nice little touch. Nothing big, but it was nice to have. And that was our Embarkation Day experience. I hope you found this interesting and entertaining. If you did, please like down below. Be sure to subscribe and ring the little bell for notifications because I have all kinds of wonderful cruise videos still to come. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.